Welcome to RotoGrinders Today. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka BlenderHD, BlenderHD. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's Friday, December 15th. We'll be taking a look at the Week 15 Sunday slate for GPP strategy. So hit that thumbs up button. Give me those thumbs here in the morning. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. Remember, there's a 3-game slate tomorrow, right? We won't be talking about that, but we do have all the projections here. We do have content for it. Squirrel Patrol has his Hitting the Nuts column for premium members. We have tons of stuff here, so go subscribe to RotoGrinders. Click on that link in the description. Get $10 off your first month, and we'll take care of you there. But joining me to discuss this 10-game, I believe 10. Yeah, 10, because we have, because of Sunday and Monday and all that stuff. This morning is Kyle Murray. And you excited about these? It seems like it's a slate of two time periods, right, Kyle?
Yeah.
We got 7 games in the early set, 3 games in the late set, and it feels like if you're leading GPPs at like 3:30 Eastern, like you better bet there's a lot of PMR coming up against you.
Yeah, definitely. That's how we were talking about that on the NBA show yesterday too, because there was a bunch of backlog news and like all the good games were later, and it feels like that's the same thing with this one. With a lot of the, it's only 3 games in the late window, but it seems like that's going to be where a lot of the love is for ownership and whatnot. But yeah, only 10 games because we have the 3-gamer tomorrow, which I like the 3-gamers honestly, and I don't mind the 10-game slate. So I think it's a pretty good weekend for some DFS and for some football for sure.
Okay, so on this show for GPP strategy, we're talking primarily about game stacks, team stacks, correlation, leverage, all the important things. Projections wise, the good plays are the good plays. Feel free to come get our projections, right? We know about Kyron Williams. We know about CeeDee Lamb. We know about that. The Christian McCaffrey, yeah. But from a game stack perspective, let's start talking about start talking about the chalk first, Kyle, and then we start going a little bit more off the board back and forth. So let's get it out of the way. I expect the highest owned game in general is this Rams Commanders game on a byproduct of price. I know basically we're going to be first talking about these late set games, but the Rams and the Commanders now have a 50.5 implied point total. The Rams have a 28.5 implied point total, which is the second highest on the slate. Kyron Williams at 7,500, probably one of, if not the most owned running back on the slate, at least in that price range at 7,500. But we have Stafford at 6K. We have Howell in the 6Ks. I think that the thing here, like my natural inclination as a GPP player is to play the leverage game by playing Stafford. Stafford, people don't like clicking on it because they perceive that he doesn't have a ceiling, right? I think he threw for 4 touchdowns in one game this year and didn't even break like 25 points. That Kupp and Nakua are not like bad values, but they don't stand out, and they're fairly expensive. My inclination is to play Stafford double stacks and then hope that Brian Robinson is out and I get to play Antonio Gibson as the run back. But I get the sense, just from how you move your lineup construction together, I think there are going to be more people that are doing the opposite direction, that they're playing Howell doubles and using Kyron Williams as the run back in the game stack. What are your thoughts on both the Stafford side, about the Stafford ceiling, and the fact that with the Commanders, whenever you try to stack the Commanders, it feels like whack-a-mole. Good luck figure out which game McLaurin's going to have 11 targets and which game he's only going to have 2 targets.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think that with the way the news is shaping up, like you mentioned with Antonio Gibson, right now we do have Robinson ruled out in the projections, so we are expecting Gibson to kind of be the guy there. But Tutu Atwell also being out is important. I think he got back to limited practice yesterday, but still sounds like it's probably going to be 50-50. So if he remains out, which we have him out in the projections right now as well, Demarcus Robinson is another value piece. that steps in, and he kind of fits with either kind of way you want to start, whether it be Howell or Stafford. But back to back pretty solid weeks for Robinson, 2 touchdowns in each of those games. So I think he'll get some love. Um, and I think also with the price of Cooper Cup, I think a lot of people like Cooper Cup around the industry, but it's one of those spots where I don't know if people are going to get him in a ton of lineups because of where they're allocating salary elsewhere. Kyron Williams on the same team in that same price range, I think he'll get obviously a lot more of a priority in terms of lineup building. So yeah, I think I agree. I think people will start with Howell. Right now, we have the 2 quarterbacks in this game as the 2 highest owned quarterbacks on the slate. So I do think both of these guys are going to get a lot of ownership regardless. And I do think people will pair Kyron with Stafford a lot as well. But in terms of Stafford's ceiling, I agree. Like I do agree with you that people sort of have that feeling, and I think a lot of it is largely because he has no rushing upside. Like you look at a lot of these guys that are consistently getting a lot of ownership in terms of quarterback play, and a lot of them have rushing upside, and Stafford doesn't have any. You mentioned the touchdowns that he's been throwing, 3 straight games with 3+ touchdowns, and these have been the best 3 games of the year. He hasn't thrown for 300 yards in any of them. 294 last week, but he hasn't thrown for 300 yards since week I think 4. But these are actually his 3 best games because the touchdown production, which obviously going to carry a lot of his weight when he's not getting any rushing upside. So I agree he doesn't have as much upside as other quarterbacks with rushing potential. But at 6K, the ceiling is definitely still there if he throws, 3 or 4 touchdowns. Again, obviously, great matchup here for him.
Also on the late set, we have another team that is going to be popular is the 49ers that have the highest implied point total.
Yeah.
We see obviously Christian McCaffrey 9,300. People love playing McCaffrey. You can preload pretty much 20 points as a floor, kind of anytime you play him. Brock Purdy, they still are not pricing up enough that he just doesn't matter how many passes he throws. He's going to get you 25 points at quarterback, it seems. You got Debo there. You got Ayuk there. The Cardinals defense is awful, and the 49ers have no problem just running up the score. On the other side, you do have guys like McBride at 5,200 at tight end. Michael Wilson, cheap 3,300 wide receiver. I mean, in comparison, like I almost feel like I ran a bunch of lineups this morning just as preliminary exercise. I get more Kyler Murray as part of this game stack instead of Purdy. And Kyler Murray, yeah, 6,400, 400 cheaper than Purdy. And I know the Cardinals have a 17.5 implied point total, but they're at home, and Kyler Murray can run. For the ownership discount, I mean, I know we have Purdy at 6.75% ownership. I don't think he's going to be that low owned. I think people have been used to just clicking on Purdy's name and moving on. And especially on this week where I don't think it's a necessity to pay up at quarterback in your lineup construction. What are your thoughts on this game? Would you just prefer to just play the 49ers and they get there all the time? I'm more inclined to if I'm either play the Murray side or just play like what I've been doing. Play 149er in every lineup you play. Like someone here, either McCaffrey, Debo, or Ayuk, or even Kittle, he could even say. Like one of them is going to put up like 30 points. And on especially the way that the totals are this year in the NFL with all these lower scoring games, getting 30 points in fantasy, I mean, that you probably want it, right? There aren't that many people that are putting up that many points. And I think on this week, especially with the Rams Commanders game, and we'll talk about the Cowboys and the Bills game, maybe the 49ers, while being owned, may not really be as high owned as maybe they should be.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of that rule that you mentioned, where you want at least one of the Niners, I think you could even go as far as saying, if you want to, if you're playing, fewer lineups, having one of either the passing attack with Purdy and a stack or McCaffrey. I think we should be expecting a lot of production here. Obviously, 30 implied team total and some really good fantasy producers here. So yeah, I agree with that. Kind of the idea of having at least one of these guys in, the majority, if not all of your lineups, just because there are so many of them. You even can loop in Kittle there as well. So yeah, I agree with that. And then, talking about the Murray side, I think that's pretty interesting because, in a game where McCaffrey, Ayuk, I guess 2 of these 4 really have the the massive ceiling games, you're probably expecting, you're probably wanting some sort of, production on the other side of things, right? To keep the 49ers their foot on the gas all 4 quarters. Because, we're getting to a point, 12 and a half point spread here. It is kind of at that point where you have to worry about that. But if you get a few touchdowns from the Cardinals, or maybe even a couple touchdowns that are at the right time for the Cardinals here, that can really sort of push the Niners for 4 quarters and elevate sort of Ayuk and Debo and McCaffrey, kind of pushing two, and then Kittle as well, pushing two of those four into really strong tournament kind of performances there, and then obviously getting a low owned leverage play on the other side with Kyler in that set. And you have a couple of guys that make sense, right? McBride, you mentioned Wilson. Hollywood's been really bad as of late, but at 5-1, I don't love I mean, he's just been really bad, so it's hard to press that button. But if you are
You have to get your
banking
money back somehow. We have to. I've lost too much money with Marquise Brown. I need to get it back somehow.
Yeah, yeah. I hear you there. But I mean, he has those like two. I think it was 2 games ago where he had the 12 target game. Like he still has that ability to kind of get honed in by Murray. So I think you could do it if you wanted to. I know it's kind of ugly to press that button because of how bad he's been, but like you said, you got to get the money back somehow, and this is a really good leverage spot. But McBride, I think, is a pretty strong play here. 5-2. Again, I think he's just too involved. I know the matchup isn't great, but tight ends, they're going to be leaned on in spots where the quarterbacks are under a lot of pressure and dealing with a tough matchup even more so. So I don't mind McBride in the bad matchup, but yeah, this is a really good game in general to target. And you mentioned the Murray stack is a really good way to get leverage in it as well.
Okay, the last game in the late set, we got the Cowboys at the Bills. We got expensive guys in this game. I mean, this is what's going to keep the ownership of this game down, is just lineup construction. Prescott is 8K, Allen's 8,200, CeeDee Lamb's 9,200, Diggs is 8,400. Then you got Tony Pollard there, who I think will be the more owned player in this game at 6,700. On the road as a 1.5 point dog. I prefer the Buffalo side of this game. I don't know how owned, like it's going to be very hard for me to judge. What we've seen this year as far as projected ownership versus actual ownership is that, remember, when we're projecting ownership, it's done with some algorithmic based judgment on how lineups construction fits together. If people are playing a lot of McCaffrey, right? You can't play a lot of CeeDee Lamb, right? Because you can't fit that in one lineup. So, like, all these things affect one another. I still get the sense that people tend to gravitate towards good game environments. So we'll have like CeeDee Lamb at 8% projected ownership. That could easily be 14, 16%. Diggs at 4, that could easily be 10, right? But the thing is that I think this will depend on if Brian Robinson plays, right? It's going to depend on if Gibson is a value. It's going to depend on how many people want to click on Ezekiel Elliott's name, right? We'll get to the 1 p.m. games. Like how many people are going to want to play two value wide receivers? They're going to play DeMarcus Robinson and Demario Douglas or something like that. So it's hard for me to judge here, but my instinct is to play the Allen's, like to play Pollard with the Allen side, to do something more like Allen, Diggs, Pollard. You can't say that Dak doesn't have rushing upside because he does scramble. He can rush in a touchdown, but I don't know if this is more of a football take when it comes to the range of outcomes. The Bills kind of need to win this game.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And in terms of, I mean, yeah, I know you're definitely not a narrative guy. I'm not a narrative guy, but two
Yeah.
pretty both quarterbacks pretty high in the MVP front running. Both want it. Both have talked about it publicly, so that'd be pretty interesting. I think it's gonna be a pretty good real life football game. I will say from an ownership perspective, probably the reason why we're seeing lower numbers on these guys is because, like you mentioned, you only have so much you can work with salary wise, and when the baseline algorithm is dictating that, it's going to see guys like McCaffrey and Kyron Williams projecting better than guys like CeeDee Lamb and Stephon Diggs, and it's going to prioritize those guys in terms of what the public's going to do. But in tournaments, people are going to flock to this game still. So I agree. I think it is going to be higher owned than we're seeing, but I do still think it's going to be, less popular than the Rams game, and probably even, the McCaffrey side of the Arizona game as well. So there's definitely some leverage here because they're going to be lower owned than Kyron Williams and McCaffrey, I would say. But with CeeDee Lamb and even Stephon Diggs, going to be a little bit higher owned, I would say, especially in smaller field stuff than we're seeing here on the screen. But still going to be lower owned compared to some of these other top plays. But no, it is a really good environment, and it's one where Dallas has just been a really good like a fantasy spot, right? Because they've been putting up so many points, and their defense is really good. But if Buffalo can get their offense going as well, like we saw, a couple weeks ago in that Philly game, there's a spot where we could see a lot of points put up here. And there's a couple of plays that I think are going to be, just maybe one-offs that are popular. Pollard, I think, will be like that. Cook might get some love. I think Ferguson could potentially be pretty popular. Ferguson I like quite a bit this week. If you're not playing McBride at 5.2, Ferguson $400 cheaper, I think makes a lot of sense. But as a tournament option, Kincaid in that same range, I don't think we'll get any ownership at all. And when you look at the routes run and the target percentage, his numbers really didn't change much at all with Dawson Knox coming back. Knox is going to be involved, but they were still using guys like Quentin Morris when Knox was out. So so Kincaid, we kind of have a very similar role in terms of targets. Obviously, he was dealing with an injury as well last game, and he still had 19.5% of the targets last game. So Kincaid, I think, is one of my favorite tournament tight ends of the week, just because I just think his upside in a game where we're expecting a lot of points, and I do think people are sort of assuming his role to kind of drift off more than it probably will with Dawson Knox returning. I mean, they drafted Kincaid in the first round for a reason. They're not planning to, have Dawson Knox take his job. So Kincaid is definitely still the guy there, and he's one of my favorite tournament plays in this game and as a tight end this week.
Chad is mentioning the weather about this game. I always want to mention the weather is already reflected in the projections, and it's also always reflected in the totals. So like
Yeah.
when you see a game total that's still 50.5, like that's already counted. It's not like you're double counting if you do this. It's not like people don't like sports bettors, because these totals, like NFL spread sides and totals, right, are like some of the most efficient markets, like more efficient than some financial markets, right? So it's Friday. The game is on Sunday.
Yeah.
Sports bettors see the weather report. Like that, it's not like all of a sudden on Sunday morning this game total is going to go down 6 points. Like we see the weather forecast, and the total is still the highest on the slate. So like I people overreact to this weather stuff. Look at last week with the Ravens game. And then you turn on the TV and you look like this. The looks like everything's fine. Like, what did people like? The total didn't move. So you're telling me that you're going to avoid a 50.5 total, and you're going to rather play a game that has a total that has like literally 2 touchdowns lower because you're scared of the weather? Like, it's already reflected. If the weather was that bad, the total in this game would be 42. It wouldn't be 50.5.
Yeah. I mean, definitely like the Vegas totals is 100%, factoring in the weather, but also, Roth, who's obviously, the goat of weather in our industry, says it's green light here. So 10 to 15 mile per hour winds, dry with mild temps for Buffalo standards. So honestly, Buffalo can get pretty brutal. So it actually sounds like it might be all right for Buffalo standards. So looks like it's all systems go there.
Okay, so now we got the 1 p.m. game. So essentially, all the chalk is kind of late, right?
Yeah.
From a game stack perspective. But then maybe one of these 1 p.m. games with the lower totals, especially some of these stacks could be pretty cheap. What's a off the board game kind of that you're looking at that you'd be looking to either game stack or team stack?
Yeah, I think the one that I'm interested in is the Miami and Jets game. That is a game with some weather. And when you talk about Vegas kind of being the big indicator there for weather, opened up the week with I think Tua had a 265 or 270 passing prop total, and that number's actually gone down to like 230. So I don't know. That might be Tyreek Hill related. It also might be weather related. It might be a mix of both. Not 100% sure there, but this is still a game that I have interest in. We saw Miami give up some points to Tennessee last week. And if the Jets, Zach Wilson looked pretty good last week, I will say. I think that was by far the best we've ever seen Zach Wilson look. Not saying that that's automatically going to carry over to this week, but We have some good fantasy producers on the Jet side with Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall. And obviously, we know that Miami has some guys as well who we can definitely make a stack up. Hill's very expensive, so tough to get to. And if you do that, obviously, you're probably not getting to Christian McCaffrey or CeeDee Lamb just because Tyreek Hill is almost 10K. But in a large field, taking a stab there, I definitely think that it's going to be a spot where this game maybe gets a little overlooked. I'm actually seeing, looks like the Jets guys are actually getting some pretty good ownership here. 25% on Wilson, 18 on Breece Hall. And that was much lower yesterday, so it's gone up in the last 24 hours or so. But still, the Miami side should be low owned because I just think people are probably having a difficult time assessing where the ball might go or who might get the production. Obviously, a Chain and Mostert are like the same price at the running back position, both pretty explosive. We saw Mostert kind of have an average game up until the last like 5 minutes of that Monday night game where he scored twice in rapid succession, and then obviously Waddle and Hill. But yeah, still a lot of upside here on this Miami side.
Right. I think that the lowest owned the Dolphins are going to be. I mean, their point total is much lower. The Jets defense is very good.
Yep.
But I mean, Tyreek Hill, if you told me if any week, any matchup that he put up 40 plus fantasy points, like you're not shocked. You don't get access to that like from anyone else on the slate that is going to be probably single digit owned.
Yeah.
So even though it's a bad matchup, even though there's weather concerns, there's literally injury concerns. I mean, I think I saw a quote that like he literally can't pivot. Like, so that's not a good sign. But that also means that a lot of people are not going to take on the risk. And I don't mind taking on the risk. I don't know. I have 10 lineups in GPP. I don't know if I'm going to play Tyreek Hill, but I wouldn't call you nuts if you just said 9,900. He's Tyreek Hill. I'm going to take a shot at low ownership for 30 plus points. But the game that I've a moderate stack. You know me. I'm like me and the vomit stacks. Okay, so yep. I got a vomit stack for you, but I first want to take a look at what you mentioned, the Dolphins, because they have a 23.5 implied total. So like I don't consider vomit stacks to be teams that actually have decent totals, right? Yeah. It has to be a team where you look at and you go, how do you play these people? A team that may go overlooked. I think there's going to be pieces of this team being played, but maybe not in total. And this is the Buccaneers-Packers game. Packers have a 22.5 implied point total. Like that's only one less than the Dolphins. And that's like the highest outside of that. That's higher than the Chiefs, right? Chiefs have a 22.75 implied total. I mean, if the slate was just the 1 p.m. games, the Packers have the second highest implied point total. And these guys are pretty cheap. I mean, why can't I play Jordan Love with Jaden Reed and Tucker Kraft? Tucker Kraft is like out there on almost every play. He may not get much of a target share, but he's out there. And a lot of times we don't mind punting the tight end position because most of these guys don't have you. You're not really getting burned a lot of the times anyway if you put up 7 points in your tight end slot. But Jaden Reed, I mean, he has some like Deebo Samuel type properties. They're giving him, some rushes and stuff. So like pairing these guys, I mean, because once you plug in Jordan Love at 6,200 and Jaden Reed at 4,900 and Tucker Kraft at 3,000, you could play Rachaad White. I think he's going to be low owned this week with other running backs that are sexier in that price range. I know he's a boring play, and he used to be a little bit cheaper, but Rachaad White has like the second best role. Like he's probably up there. It's probably McCaffrey, him, and now Kyron Williams as like guys that like play like 90% of the snaps and catch balls out of the backfield. I'm not scared of the Packers defense. What are your thoughts on? I don't expect this game to shoot. This doesn't feel like a shootout type of game. But the thing is that when you're playing guys at this price level, I don't need it to be. Like I just need Jordan Love to throw for 302 touchdowns. I need Jaden Reed to, go 8 for 80 with 1 touchdown at 4,900. Tucker Kraft to 3 for 20 and a touchdown. And Rachaad White to give me his normal 20 points. And I have the money to play everyone else. I mean, I can play McCaffrey in that lineup. I can play other people. And the ownership doesn't seem to, I mean, I think Jaden Reed is going to be fairly popular in this 5K level wide receiver range. And I think some people may punt it with Kraft at like in cash games, maybe. But I'm not sure how many people are going to play Jordan Love at 6,200 when there are other when Stafford's there at 6K and Purdy's at 6,800. Like, I don't know. People don't like playing Jordan Love either because he kind of sucks.
Yeah, I agree. I think Reed and Kraft will probably have their own ownership regardless, but I don't think Love will get a ton of love, especially you mentioned the Rams and Commanders game with both those quarterbacks being in the same price range. So yeah, I agree, and I think it's a pretty good spot. Both teams also their defenses are bottom 11 against the pass, so it could be a spot where two teams sort of looking to pass more because that's where the weakness is in their opposition, and that kind of slows the game down, clock stopping more plays being ran. So can definitely even if there aren't necessarily a ton of points put up, you can still see might not be necessarily a shootout, but you see an uptick in terms of pace and plays and more fantasy production, and maybe not necessarily a ton of points because they're not the best offenses in the world, but if you're seeing more plays and more pace, you can definitely get more expected production there. Obviously, some injuries in the game to monitor there with Wicks getting banged up. Sounded like he wasn't going to play for a couple of. It sounded like there was a high ankle sprain there that he dealt with on Monday, but he's questionable. AJ Dillon apparently broke his thumb. He's questionable. Aaron Jones obviously been out the last couple of weeks with a knee injury, questionable. So it sounds like might be a spot where also Packers have nobody in the backfield. Might be the Kenyon Drake show back there or the Patrick Taylor show back there. Maybe they're going to be throwing even more. So yeah, definitely. I like the stack idea for the Packers and in this game. And obviously we know Tampa Bay. You mentioned Rashad White, but also the pass catchers. There's definitely some guys to get to here. So I like it.
Okay, so do you have a vomit stack type of lower team total? I have one. I'm hoping maybe you're not going to select the one that I have. I mean, I have 1.5. I mean, I kind of two. I mean, that you could play, but
Yeah.
so what's one of these hold your nose low implied team total cheap guys? Let's jam in everyone else type of stack. Because I don't put Packers in there because Packers have the quality from the price perspective, but their team total is actually pretty decent. So, like, to me, I don't think you're holding your nose to play a Jordan Love stack, but
Yeah.
I think there's some others where you're really holding your nose.
Yeah, definitely. I think from a holding your nose because it might be a little bit ugly. I definitely have one, but they're also not the cheapest stack. I just think they're going to be pretty low owned. It's the Bears, 17.5 implied total here for them. Um, they're not overly cheap. Like you still have Justin Fields at 7K, DJ Moore is 6'9", so maybe they're not a through and through vomit stack because they don't necessarily offer like that instant salary relief. But I don't think many people are going to play them, and it's actually, the Browns have a reputation of being an elite defense. And while I think they still have a good defense, they haven't really shown us anything over the past month, maybe even month and a half. They've allowed 27 or more points in 4 of their last 5 games. And one of those games were against the still with Matt Canada led Steelers a few weeks ago. So that's not necessarily a ringing endorsement of their defense there. 27 against the Jags, 36 to the Rams, 29 but from the Broncos. So I mean, those are good offenses, but maybe not necessarily top tier. And then obviously 31 against the Ravens about a month ago. So teams have been putting up points on this Cleveland team. And obviously with Joe Flacco on the other side, they've turned to a pass heavy approach. I think 40 plus attempts, maybe even 44 and then 45 pass attempts for Flacco in his 2 starts. So they're throwing the ball a lot more, which only bodes well, and that probably correlates with more points being scored against them. They're obviously stopping the clock more on incompletions and whatnot. So that's going to bode well from a fantasy environment. And then in terms of guys who you can pair up with Justin Fields, and you can even use Joe Flacco as well. Joe Flacco, that would be the vomit stack, right? That's kind of where it would, that
Well, I
instant
don't know how
salary
much of a
relief.
vomit stack that is. I mean, I actually think people want to play
Yeah,
Cooper and Njoku. I think the people will look at this and go, "This is the sneaky place," right? They're going to go, "I'm going to play Flacco, Njoku, Cooper, run it back with DJ Moore," and then they're
yeah,
going to Lock's going to hit at 1 o'clock, and they're going to wonder like, "Why did I just play a 22% tight end? And why is Amari Cooper like 16% owned and Joe
yeah,
Flacco is 8% owned?" And like it ends up being that like this is like the 4th highest owned like team on the entire slate. Like
yeah,
that's the problem I have with the Browns. It's not that I don't like the Browns. And the Bears, to me, If you told me that Justin Fields has 40 fantasy points or DJ Moore has 30 plus fantasy points, are you shocked? Right? Justin Fields could rush for 100 yards. I mean, yes,
Yeah.
it's a bad matchup on the road. The Bears are not a good team. But these are the types of players that, just like with the Tyreek Hill situation of Justin Fields 7K, Millie Maker winning lineup when he, rushes for 100 and throws for 200, has 4 total touchdowns, and people are wondering, oh, the only reason we didn't play them is because of Browns.
Yeah, yeah, I agree, and you're talking ownership, like Komet being in that same game, $200 cheaper than Njoku. That's an easy pivot to make there if you wanted to get lower on. I do like Cooper a good amount. He I think had 30% of the targets last week, and looking around his ownership, I'm actually curious about because obviously looking around in the industry, we're a lot higher on him compared to projection. So maybe that's a spot where our ownership's going to instantly look higher because our projection is better on Cooper. And that's always one of the things that's why it's good to look around and get a feel for the industry. But Cooper, I think potentially might be a little bit lower than what our numbers are looking like, just because of the fact that our projections are higher. But Elijah Moore at 4.5, he's another one of those guys who has he's an interesting player because we see him pretty involved in the passing game. 6+ targets in 5 straight games. But he also is a guy who has a lot of design plays as well. His first target shares is a lot higher than most guys in this price range that you're going to see, which is always a nice thing to have. You know that you're going to get some design targets for a guy like Moore, 4,500. So he's a pivot in this spot to also get salary, but also have a nice tournament kind of contrarian leverage play there. And then for Darnell Mooney, he finally got involved a little bit last week. He's just been brutal and sort of shut out of the offense. But the Bears have been dealing with some injuries, kind of down their depth chart in terms of guys like Velus Jones, Tyler Scott, Equinemius St. Brown. All these guys are banged up right now. So maybe if these guys aren't getting as much playing time cycling in and out, maybe you'll see more time for Mooney and more targets. It's more of a dart throw there, but he is 3,400, so that's kind of what you're gonna that's kind of what you're hoping for down here. So there's plenty of ways to get some salary and definitely be contrarian in this game. So especially from the Bears side, I like this game a pretty good amount.
Okay, so my vomit stack of the week as of right now, I'm going to give you a stack with a quarterback that has won the past 3 games, right? He's won the past 3 games. Now they're on the road and they're playing indoors, right? They're playing
Oh, I think I
indoors,
know who it is.
especially if you're going to look at the blitz, right? And once you get the dome factor in effect, they're very cheap, and they're playing a team with a quarterback that tends to screw things up a lot. Can I interest you in some Tommy DeVito at 5K? Right? Hey, let's come on. Tommy DeVito, Wandale Robinson,
Yep.
Darius Slayton, Jalen Hyde. I mean, all these people are cheap, right? You could run it back. You could pair DeVito with Barkley even. You could
Yeah.
run it back with Kamara or Olave on the other side. I mean, like I mean, DeVito's 5K, Wandale's 3,700, Slayton's 3,100, Hyde is 3,200. I mean, there's no one on the Giants other than Barkley that's like cost you any money. I know, yeah, it's a 16.75 implied team total, but like if Carr's playing, like Carr could easily, like Noodle Arm Carr could screw up anything at any time, right? The Giants defense ain't like bad or anything. What's wrong with they're in the dome. Jalen Hyatt, 70-yard touchdown. I mean, like Wandale Robinson has, 7 catches for 70 yards and the touchdown, and Barkley. I mean, like the Saints defense is good, right? But it's Tommy DeVito. He's the talk of the town. How do you not play DeVito in the dome?
Yeah, I like it a lot. First of all, I think Wanda Robinson's one of the better value plays that isn't getting a ton of steam as of right now on the slate. So I like Wanda Robinson. And then 2 of my favorite sort of spend up tournament plays are also in this game with Olave and Alvin Kamara. So yeah, there's a lot to like. And Kamara might only get better once we get some news on Taysom Hill, who's questionable. Taking him out, might not sound like a huge deal, but he has so much work in the red zone, and obviously he's running the ball quite a bit. That's only going to help Kamara. So yeah, Kamara I like a lot. Olave I like a pretty good amount as well. So that's 2 obviously pretty expensive run backs there. But if you're playing the Giants, salary doesn't really matter a whole lot. But did you see that DeVito's agent got inducted into the Italian Hall of Fame, the Italian Sports Hall of Fame, with like Dan Marino, DiMaggio?
Is
This
there
guy,
really does that actually exist?
yeah, yeah.
It does. There's a physical place that you can go and
I don't know if it's necessarily a physical place, but let's see. Italian Sports Hall of Fame.
it doesn't count if it's not a physical space because then it could just be anything.
Yeah, it is. It's a physical space in Chicago.
The Italian Sports Hall of Fame. His agent has already been inducted. Is that how few Italian sports stars are there that this guy could get in like on like a week's notice?
I don't know. I mean, like, so just looking at the names that I saw when I read the article, it was Dan Marino, Joe DiMaggio. There was another pretty big name as well. And I was like, dang, those are pretty big names. 'Cause at first I thought it was just like kind of a joke thing. And then I read those names. But, looking at the Wikipedia, which again, who knows how. There's a lot of names here. So maybe it's not that like maybe if you're just Italian at all, you instantly get put in. But like the Andretti's are in here. Those are pretty big names. So um, Alex Del Vecchio, old hockey player there. So there's some big names, but there's a lot of names in here too. So maybe it's not like maybe it's
It's
not
not
an
that
exclusive
exclusive of a
group.
club,
Yeah.
right? It's
Yeah.
kind of they kind of let anyone in, right? But I
Yeah.
come from Brooklyn. I'm originally from Brooklyn. Like that
Okay.
guy is not a meme. That guy exists. I can tell. Like that isn't like oh my god. It's like he came out of a movie. It's like no. I knew like 700 people that's exactly that. That's South Brooklyn or Howard Beach or something like that. I went to Italian restaurants. That's you'll see 31 of those people sitting down at tables, right? That's the whole thing.
Yeah, that was priceless. So I figured that was a good story to share.
Another vomit stack. I said it's a half a vomit stack. Uh, to me, I view this as like leverage off of what could be a chalky Ezekiel Elliott. Can I interest you in some Bailey Zappi stacks with Demario Douglas and Devontae Park? Because I'm just looking at the price. It's just like, yeah, this team sucks, right? But I mean, the price is just like if you're gonna play Demarius Douglas as a value play, why not just hope that Bailey Zappi throws him the ball a ton? And it's not the Chiefs don't look nearly as good as they did. Their defense is actually probably better than their offense now. You could even play Zappi with Elliott. I mean, like you can play Zappi, Elliott, Demarius Douglas, and then just jam in everything you want in the rest of your lineup. So this is the main reason. It's like I'm not like pro Tommy DeVito or pro Bailey Zappi. It's just finding like three value, like when you could look at our projections and go, there are three guys from one team that have a decent salary adjusted value that if I just played all three of them together, correlated, well, so many people will play them as a one-off. 8% of people play this guy as a one-off, 14% of people play this guy as a one-off, but no one wants to combine them together. It's like, well, I'll just combine them together and then dude, I could just jam everything I want around it. And the only way you could jam everything you want around it is by playing one of these. Like that is the key to this. It's less about the stack or the game. It's more about the fact that I can play CeeDee Lamb and Christian McCaffrey in the same lineup. And the value pieces that I'm playing are correlated to each other. So I'm not playing DeMarcus Robinson and Wan'Dale Robinson. Like they're in two different games. Like I just want to correlate. I want one game to kind of go off very cheap price and then everyone else to hit their ceiling. Like that's the benefit of these types of things. But I think I'm much more likely to click on Tommy DeVito than I am for Bailey Zappi.
Yeah, I think I agree. Definitely prefer DeVito over Zappi. I think the one thing that really holds me back from Zappi, other than it being Bailey Zappi, is the main pairing is with Douglas, and Douglas I think is actually gonna be very popular. We have him at like 3%, but again, that's because our projection is lower than projections around the industry. We're a lot lower on him than the kind of the market, I guess, which I don't love. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the value guy that's like in the mid teens, right? Which I'll hard pass on a Patriots receiver that's going to be popular. That's sure he's 3,900, but much rather play Wan'Dale Robinson. So there's a couple of guys, even Jonathan Mingo, who I don't know if I'd call that a value stack that I like, but like I would prefer Mingo over Douglas at lower ownership as well. But in terms of comparing the Patriots vomit stack to others, prefer the Giants. I think I might even prefer the Jets as well with Zach Wilson. I know the pairing partners aren't as cheap there, but still Zach Wilson's cheap enough to kind of make some things work there. And then you also have, what can I interest you in any Davis Mills here for Houston with I guess we'll see how their offense kind of operates with no CJ Stroud, but they've been a team that's kind of been trying to play a little bit more high powered. Obviously, Nico Collins is expensive, but you have a couple of other guys. If Nico Collins doesn't play, which sounds like he's 50-50 right now, I would say, especially with Stroud out. Maybe if he's out, you got guys like John Mechie, Xavier Hutchinson getting more time, Robert Woods, Noah Brown, who've already seen both of those guys have a couple big games. I know it's ugly for Mills, but we've seen him at least have decent games before. Not many, but Tennessee's
Well,
been
I
a
love the way that
pass
the
funnel.
best thing you could say about a guy is we've seen him before. We've seen him. We've seen him. He's
we,
there.
yeah, we have some information to work with. But yeah,
What does his agent look like? I'm gonna roster people this week that have like kooky agents. Like so
he has.
we need to have some content, some premium content. Let's Devin, who's producing, get on that. Let's have a video. We need to have a video of the kooky agents, right?
This guy, if it's going to be
It
the
has to be
opposite,
included in our projection model. The kooky agent.
I'm putting it on the schedule right now.
looks like based on Davis Mills, the really long neck. I'm assuming this guy either has no neck at all or his neck is even longer. But his name is Joe Segal. That's the information I have for you right now.
How do you what's his how do you spell that name?
Segal.
So what's his first name?
Joel. Yep.
Siegel, American sports agent. Okay, we can see here. I don't know. It doesn't look kooky enough. I mean, they kind of. Right, we see here.
Yeah, he's not as memeable, that's for sure.
Right, like this guy. I'm not rostering Mills. I mean, right? There's no.
He's got a nice picture with Patrick Peterson there, though. That must be his. Yeah, probably not.
Right. This guy looks like a kind of normal. Could be a sports agent. Could be a real estate agent. Like that's what it.
Yeah,
right?
he's not.
It's no Joe DeVito's age. I don't even know what his name is, but there's not enough kooky agent factor.
I think Tommy DeVito's agent's name is like Steve Stellato or something like that, which is just like priceless.
Yeah, Steve Stellato agent.
Oh, Sean Stellato. Yeah, Sean Stellato. Sorry.
Stellato.
Yeah.
Come on. How do you not roster Tommy DeVito? Come on. Right?
Yeah, I don't think we'll see Davis Mills agent kissing his dad on the cheek.
Right? Come on. You got to bump him up in the projections just from the kooky agent.
Get right on it. I'll get right on it.
Just that this is like the 50-year-old version of every guy that I knew in Brooklyn. Like just everyone. Like that. There's 100. There's 1,000 of these people.
I actually can't tell how old that guy is. Like sometimes I'll see him and I think he looks like he's like 18, and then I'll look at him again. It looks 40. I actually don't know how old he is.
Right, he could be a very old-looking 32-year-old or a very young-looking 68-year-old.
Yeah, like when I first saw him, I thought he was like DeVito's agent. He was like DeVito's best friend or whatever. Like just happened to be his agent as well.
Right, because look at this. Look at this photo. It looks like this guy could be like 20, 26 years old. Right? You see right here?
Yeah.
Right, and then you look at this, and it's like, oh, okay, this guy's 58, right, with a drug problem. Right? That's what it
turns out he's 45.
Right? Okay. So right in the middle.
Yeah, right in the middle.
Regression to the mean, right in the middle. That's I got that up there. Okay. Anything else on the slate other than just play the guys with kooky agents, and you're probably going to do well. Anything else that we haven't mentioned? Macro stuff. Anything content wise that you're coming out with? You have picks and props and anything.
Yeah, we got some props in for the prop model. Put I think 5 or 6 of those in last night. been a downswing the past couple weeks. So we're at like 70% hit rate to start the year. So we, a little bit of a regressing to the mean there, but I feel confident with this week. We have the Saturday best that's up right now for the 3-game. The Sunday best will be up. I'll have that up probably tonight around dinner time, I would say. And then a prop video coming out later today as well. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Right. You could always get our props and pick 'em package. Right. Let's say you're not playing DFS. You're sick of it. You're done. Right. You don't want to have to play vomit stacks. You just want to bet on the props, get the pick 'em stuff, and you don't have to worry about anyone else. No leverage, no ownership. Who cares? So just if you want the props and pick 'em only, it goes along with our projections. So I mean, like if you're a premium member, you can just download the projection. You can do whatever the hell you want with them. That's what I do. We have stat level projections, but you just want like the top projections versus what the books have, right? You get a table. You get our top 20, our scores and odds prop model, top 20. You get all the expert picks, right? Just get our props and pick 'em package. I believe there's a sale. I believe you get like a week or something. Then maybe Devin can chime in. Like, are we still running your first month is like $10 or something?
I'm pretty sure that was an introductory sale only. I'm pretty sure we are now back to full regular price for it.
Okay, so there, you missed it. That's what happens. You miss things. You gotta get them quick.
If you can find it, if you can find a graphic somewhere on the site, maybe you could find a back door. But I'm pretty sure that was just a one-time sale for the beginning.
Okay, but pick that up if you want that. I'll be on MMA Crunch Time tomorrow. We got a UFC pay-per-view card. 12 fights. It was 14. We can't have nice things. They always have to cancel fights. So I'll be on that with the Mike H3 Buddha tomorrow. We got NBA tonight, right? We got NHL. Our NHL stuff is always running, right? We got articles for that. We got the Discord is great for that. So join us there in the Discord, rotogrinders.com/Discord. Grinders Live will be later today. Crunch Time. We got the pre-lock show. We got Saturday slate. We got the Blitz show with Cardi. We got everything here. So hit that notification bell. You'll always know when we go live. And if you're new here, hit the subscribe button. Hit the thumbs up button on your way out the door. I'm telling you to do a lot of things. Do one of them. Pick one of them to pick your favorite one to do, and do one of those things. And thanks, Kyle, for coming on the show. And I'll see you back here on Monday talking about all things you're thinking about. Daily fantasy, props and pick 'em on RotoGrinders Today.